everybody. Mark here from Thailand Connect. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode, actually. And I'm delighted to have another fantastic guest on with us today. I have Naomi from Melbourne on the show with us. Hello, Naomi.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us today on the show. It's awesome to have you here. I sort of, in the past, I've generally prefaced it that, I'm not going to, take up too much of the airtime in the beginning because I love it to be all about the guests. And thank you for reaching out after hearing some of our past episodes. It was great to, it's great to actually hear from people putting their hand up going, hey, I want to be involved.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I know Chris Stenhouse and I listened to the podcast with you and him and I was like, this was really good. It was really interesting. And might be also because I know him as well, but I was like, I want to have a go. So that's why I reached out. I always gave you like great feedback because I really meant it. And I was like, I wonder if I can have a go. And here we are. So
that's awesome. Yeah, love it. I was doing, as I do with all my guests, I do a whole bunch of research before we jump on the show. And it's good because I get to know people more intimately and in particular, their backgrounds and the type of work that they do. And you do some amazing stuff. And I know we'll end up talking about that throughout the program, but it's really crafty. Like you've got such a flair to the art that you do, and it's really unique. That's not to say that other people don't have great tiling and building work, but I just saw the curves in some of the videos that you did on some of the different jobs. Pretty amazing.
Thank you. I love what I do. So it's pretty easy for me to get lost in what I do. And I forget that, anything and everything is happening elsewhere. And I'm just in the moment, just kind of getting the flow and not really thinking too much about it. I don't know, it just kind of naturally happens. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, look, let's wind it back a little bit. Let's go to the beginning and would love, you have the floor now. So tell us about you and how you grew up in the industry and where did it all start?
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure it's probably been 24 years now, believe it or not, that I've been a tradie. So I left school, I think I was about 14, 15. And I just kind of fell into my first apprenticeship, which was a painter by trade. The reason I kind of went down that track and left school was I was never actually good at school. Like I wasn't good at most of the subjects and I was just, to be honest, really struggling. But I knew that I was always really, really good at art. So it just so happened that my careers advisor at the time said, well, I don't really know where to put you, but perhaps try this. And so I took a week off and, just did house painting and I absolutely loved it. So that was like, as I said, 24 years ago. And so my passion and my love for houses was always there. When I look back, it all makes sense. But in the time when I was making those decisions, I was kind of just going into the deep end of the water. And 24 years ago, there was hardly any, girls going into apprenticeships. And even at the time, I remember my first boss said to me that he was actually like, nah, I don't want a girl. And it was his wife that said, I think you should give her a go. You never know, she might be your best apprentice yet. And he said to me, you ended up being that. So that's kind of where that journey started. And it just kept evolving over 24 years. Like anyone that knows me knows the back, history of like my other business, which was one room at a time, where I was kind of doing all kinds of things. And then I studied interior design for 3 years and studied Cert 3 in waterproofing, and then got into micro cementing, which is what I do now, which I'm insanely obsessed with, if you couldn't tell already. Yeah.
Well, love the backdrop.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So does that make you a 70s or an 80s baby?
80s baby.
80s baby. Oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great vintage. Not far from me. I'm late 70s, so nearly 80s.
Okay. Yeah, well, there you go. You can we'll let you get into the 80s if you want.
Yeah, fantastic. Love it.
Yeah.
So that just picking up on that last thing that you said about you say micro cement?
Yes, micro cement.
Tell me more about that. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Give me a bit. Well, give us a bit of a look in on what is that? What's that all about?
Yeah. So it's basically an application that you can use on walls, floors, furniture, pretty much anything you can put your mind to it. But the great thing that it's allowed me to go down is it can be used in bathrooms. Hence why I studied Cert 3 waterproofing, because I was like, as soon as I saw a picture of a micro cement bathroom, I was like, what is that? I need that. I need to learn this. And so then that's when I put myself into Cert 3 as well. So it's a troweled on finish and it becomes water resistant. I say waterproof, it's technically still water resistant, the same equivalent to like a tile finish. And clear sealers go on top of that, and you can have a seamless bathroom with no grout lines. So it's super easy to clean, and it just, in my opinion, looks amazing. I just love it. It's just because it's one of those things that I've found that it allows me to be even more creative with it. There's like no limitations in my mind. Like if I come up with an idea for a client or myself, I'm like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see if I can push the boundary with it and just go with it. And it just happens. And yeah, love it.
That's freaking cool. So the product that you use, is it a unique product to one or two companies, or is it more of a widely used product?
Well, I'm starting to find out that there is more companies out there now, which I'm exploring, because I suppose it's like even tiling or waterproofing and things like that. You know, sometimes some brands will have a product that is better for a particular use compared to another company. And that's how I'm kind of weighing it up with what I'm used to with my micro cement and some other companies of what they've got to offer. So there is a few companies out there. I do have a feeling that more companies are going to get on board once they start to see how in demand it's going to get. I really do feel it's going to move that way. It's when I say micro cement, Venetian plaster is another term, which is another product that you can do a similar concept with. It's not as versatile as the micro cement, but you can still achieve similar looks and function wise. And that's been around forever. That's like been all the way back to Italy. Like I'm not going to say how long. It could be hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
But it's such a new concept for Australia. And in my opinion, when you weigh up the Venetian and the micro cement, again, everyone's going to have their own opinion. The micro cement is better. It's stronger and its properties are better. And yeah, that's because I've used both, and I prefer the micro cement.
Yeah, wow. And is it predominantly used on walls mainly?
Most of the time, yes, it's mostly used on walls. But you know, I've seen it being used on ceilings, walls, floors, floating vanities, furniture. You know, you name it. Cabinetry. Like I haven't done it on a ceiling yet, but I think there might be a project coming up that I will be. That's going to be intense, because doing trowel work above your head and then polishing. Yeah. Sore shoulders. But I've done cabinetry. I've done floating vanities. I've done shower floor and walls. So I've done a fair bit now. So
yeah, that's cool. How did that? I mean, one of my key questions, right, was to ask how you, is what you like most about the construction industry. So let's go there first, and then we can talk more about micro cements. I like the term micro cements. I think it's pretty cool. Yeah. Tell like why the building, why construction, what motivated you to be to jump into that area?
Again, to be honest, I wasn't good at school. And when you're in school, in that school bubble, you think, oh no, like, what am I going to do with my life? Because, you know, school says that you have to be good at this to make something out of life. And I remember I was at the back of the classroom all the time drawing, because I was very artistic, still am. And funnily enough, I'd be always drawing houses. And I remember thinking to myself at the back of the classroom, you know, hoping that I'm not going to get caught for doing this again. But I thought to myself, I wonder if this will be a reflection of my life in the future, which is such a weird thing as a 14-year-old to think like that. But it was true.
Yeah.
And so that was the journey that pushed me into the building industry, because I mean, most of the time, whether it's a building or it's a house, like it's that's where my passion is. So that's really what led me there. And that's why I'm still here, because I'm just so passionate about houses. I always have been. I love them. So can't get enough of them, really. So
Nice.
Yeah.
And a big, were there any, did you have any sort of people around you at the time that were influential in you know,
No.
guiding you down that path, or you're very independent and just found it and loved it? And
Yeah, I've always been independent, and that has a lot to do with my childhood growing up, because both my parents are actually completely deaf. So
wow.
when you're the eldest, you have a lot of, responsibilities from a very young age, as well as in many ways you learn to be independent because you're the eldest as well. So you kind of have to work stuff out for yourself. So it's just always been something that I had to do anyway. And so again, when it came to learning and things like that, it wasn't necessarily my niche when it came to basic things at school, but art was always my thing. Like I excelled really, really well. And so I just kind of luckily honed into that, even though there wasn't a lot for me to go, oh, well, maybe I could do this or maybe I could do that, because there wasn't. At the time, the one thing that did inspire me was a TV show called Changing Rooms. I don't know if you remember that show.
Yeah, I do. Yep.
And I was like, okay, maybe a lot of the styles that they did on there weren't that great, but I was like, I would love to do things like that. So that's actually how I translated it to my careers advisor. And he was like, I don't know what that's going to be, but here you go. Here's a painting apprenticeship. And it just kind of all went from there.
Yeah, wow. I had a short story. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. That's really awesome of you to share that with us. A mate of mine was a chippy when he was around. Unfortunately, he passed away during COVID, and I wasn't able to get back home to Queensland to say farewell to him because, as I mentioned before, I was still living in Melbourne. And I remember having a conversation with him about a decade ago, and he was on shows similar to that. I don't know if it was Changing Rooms or it was another blockbuster on TV. And we were chatting one day over a few beers about the construction methodologies around, shows like that and others, and how they cut it and edit it together to make it look like they're doing these rooms in a day and 2 days. And I'm like, there's just things in there that you just can't physically possibly achieve, particularly given the curing times of a lot of products.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So I'm like, how are you doing this? And it's like, oh, we've done it in a day, 24 hours. And that's like the pinnacle of the show's achievement. And I'm just wondering, I'm not sure how long that's going to last.
No,
and Kevin said, he goes, mate, they just put us under so much pressure to get it done quickly. And, there's so many corners cut just to make a show look amazing.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's show business, right? That's why we're here today.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So you've been doing a lot of work lately. What's some of the stuff that you're working on at the moment? You're on a job site right now, of course. What are you doing right now? What's the work?
Well, there's not much to show on this job, but if I point in that direction, there's a bathroom there. So I'll be doing some more prep work in there. I'll be doing waterproofing, which actually, admittedly, I've already waterproofed underneath where the screed goes. And I've had another trade come in and do the screed yesterday.
Nice.
So letting that cure. So I'll be doing the waterproofing and also using micro cement in there as well.
Cool.
But I'm still at another job, trying to finish off a little bit here and there, just because that was a whole micro cement bathroom. You may have seen it on my stories. It's got a lot of curves, and actually you would have.
Yeah.
On with the floating vanity.
Yeah, I saw that. That's awesome. Yeah.
So that was all done, except I just had to wait on the cabinet guy to actually put in the cabinetry, because I'm coating the entire thing in micro cement into the sinks and everything. So that's going to look pretty special.
Yeah, awesome.
Done. Yeah.
That's so cool. And with the work that you do in that space, how do you go about obtaining new work? Is it word of mouth, or do you have like a marketing sort of plan and how you get new work?
Yeah. Most of my work, you know, because I've worked for myself solely since I was like 21. So now I'm almost 40. It's been a long time. Most of my work has always been word of mouth. I'm really big on that. However, it's been tricky now that I'm in this niche because it's such a new venture. Like, how do you get word of mouth to work when no one really knows much about it? So that's been a tricky one. But like the term I like to use, I've been out there, no joke, hustling for like 3 years nonstop. It's been
Wow.
hard. But I'm now starting to see the word of mouth slowly trickle now, where I'll actually get a builder. Like I had one yesterday, and an architect designer had passed on my details to them, and they said, "We've got a job." And then I could hear in the builder's voice, he's like, "Oh, a micro," like, because he didn't know what it was, but he knew that his client wanted it. And he's like, "Could you come and have a look?" And I said, "Sure." So it's starting to create that, which is great because I'll be honest, I'm used to networking a different way where, you know, you can get into the industry and get to know your suppliers and things like that. So you can get a little bit of leads that way. But in this industry of micro cement or Venetian, the suppliers don't do that. They don't give you any leads. So
Wow.
everything you see on my page, I've hustled to make happen. And it's been extremely hard. But there's no support for it, which is really disappointing because, you know, it would be great if they did support, especially their loyal ones that buy a lot of, but they don't give any leads out.
Well, look, I've got to be honest. It's
Yeah.
pretty new to me. I haven't really heard about micro cement or micro cement techniques or micro cement craft personship, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. I was looking at your profile. How many people in Australia are doing this sort of work?
I wouldn't be able to tell you because I don't know, but I have heard through like that new industry for me. There's been a lot of people that have gone through and done the training, but it hasn't become anything because they don't know how to generate work from it because it is so
Right.
hard. But, you
Yeah.
know, if these suppliers actually gave them a lead just to start off with, it
Yeah.
allows all these people that have now been certified to get a start because all you really need is at least one project to start that word of mouth. But that's why. So I would say there's probably not a lot of us out there because it's really hard. But because I'm so passionate and I know when I want something, I
Yeah.
don't give up. I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm like, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna make it happen. So
That's very cool. Love it.
yeah.
What's your pipeline looking like for work for this year? Are you booked out?
I wouldn't necessarily say I'm booked out. And until people actually, you know, pay a deposit, that's when I go, okay, I'm booked in.
Yeah.
But mind you, though, there's a lot of discussions at the moment. So it's looking promising. But until they're actually booked in, then I can say to myself, I am.
Yeah.
But I'd probably say I'm probably booked up for at least the next couple of months.
That's cool.
So that's really good. So that's promising. So yeah.
And how do you find the industry in Melbourne now? Is it still pretty busy? I mean, you know, I'm up here in Queensland, and obviously my day job business is in Sydney, and we're seeing that a lot of trades are still booked out for 6-12 months in advance. There's plenty of work to be done. Is that sort of, are you hearing similar stories down there?
I don't really know, to be honest, because I'm now pushing myself in a completely new industry, and
Yeah.
being a tradie for 24 years and getting into now this industry, it's like a completely different world. Like,
Wow.
it's not the same as what I'm used to with like all the tradies that I like speak with or whatever. Like, there's still a lot of tradies that I still speak to that are from other industries, and there's that nice feeling of support and, you know, where you touch base and you ask each other questions. Whereas in this industry of micro cement, it's not very much like that. Maybe it will eventually be like that, but I feel like because it's such a hard niche, everyone's very like, they don't want to share or they don't want to connect. the same way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, of course.
Yeah. So.
Well, it sounds as though you've got a little bit of a market cornered. It's probably a big market. So that's pretty cool. It's awesome to have that niche, and you never know. You might be able to do like a podcast or something out of it in the future. You could do your own. You could do your own little mini series on micro cement application.
Yeah, that's kind of
cool.
cool.
And be what do they call it? Those people, the pioneer of the technology in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Just planning for you, CT.
Put it out there. Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Now, tell me what's been some of your biggest challenges in your career in the 24 years you've been involved in the game?
I would probably say the biggest challenges, because I've moved around a lot, because I've been a bit of a gypsy for a long chunk of my life.
Well, you should share some of that with us.
Yeah, I will, for sure.
Yeah.
I would say the biggest challenges for me is every time I've decided, right, I feel like I want to move, I want to try something new. That was always the hardest thing, because you have to start everything again. Like, to give you an example, like I said, I studied interior design, which I implement that into my work at the moment too, in my bathrooms. But when I studied that, I finished that, I think, when I was 24, 25. So I think that's almost 14 years ago now. The industry in Sydney at that time, no matter what you were doing, was just dead. And so I just thought, there's no hope for me to try and start this design stuff up. So I actually went just to Tasmania for a weekend and was like, oh my gosh, I love it here. And I was like, yep, gonna move here. And like, my family was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna do it. And so at the time, I'd been studying for 3 years. So like, I had no money virtually. I had $1,000 to my name. And I had a car, I had a box trailer with all my stuff in there. And I knew one person in Tasmania that were like, yeah, don't worry, I'll get you a place and I'll get you a bit of work. I was like, okay, cool. Got there, no place to stay and no work. And I was shitting myself, like literally. But again, I know what I'm like. I said to myself, I can't go back, because there's no work in Sydney, no matter what industry you're in. It was just going through a really bad patch. It would be a failure for me if I went back. I'm going to make this happen. And I did. And I ended up staying in Tasmania for, I think, 3.5 years, restoring old buildings and houses, and started my own business down there, and got to know people down there. I've actually got a friend who I'm still friends with to this day. And he's another painter by trade. We're still such great mates. So it was a really great small snippet into my journey of like some of the challenges that I've been up against, that has actually in the long run taught me a lot and made other situations easier, because I faced some pretty full-on challenges without me knowing that they were going to arise until I got there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do you think it's that moment where you realize that you've got nothing? And I mean that in the nicest possible way. No money, no career, no prospects. And you just go, holy shit, I really need to pull my socks up and like pivot left or pivot right and make something happen.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But I mean, those moments I look back and I actually smile, like I get happy about those, like, because they're the sorts of things that, you have these enriching stories that shape you. And then I remember, because I went through all of that, when I visited Melbourne, because I actually, funnily enough, I applied for a TV show and I almost got on.
Oh, which one?
Yeah, I was only on for a really small amount of time. It was called Top Design, and I passed everything. And I was like, yeah. And then I even booked myself a flight for the audition, passed everything. And then they were like, okay, you've passed everything. But now, I don't know if it was Channel 9 or Channel 7 or what it was. They were like, it's up to them. And obviously they've got to pick the right personalities to create the right conflict or whatever. And I didn't make it to that part, it is what it is. But I was there for the weekend and I met people that were also auditioning, and, we had a great weekend. We hung out together and I was like, yep, Melbourne feels right. I'm going to move to Melbourne. And I had no fear. I had no place to stay. no job, no nothing. I went, if I can do it in Tasmania, I can do it here. And so I
Yeah,
did. And that was like 11 years ago now. So
that's so cool.
yeah.
So Sydney, Tasmania, Melbourne, and
Hmm.
that's where you
I've
set
lived
up
in
camp.
also Armidale for a year, which is near Tamworth as well.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
cool. I
Yeah.
like it out west. I used to do a lot of travel for work, and
Mhm.
a lot of my background. I've spent nearly 10 years working for adhesive manufacturers, so I'm very familiar with waterproofing products and adhesives and
Mhm.
grouts and all of the other things that go into that mix. And I
Sure.
used to do a lot of travel around central Queensland, North Queensland, and down into south into Sydney and northern New South Wales and out that way. And it's
Oh, did you
beautiful.
go to Armidale
Yeah,
or?
yeah, a number of times.
Oh,
Yeah, I've got customers there today that I've
no
had
way.
since back in those days. You typically you will hang on to the people that you deal with or the businesses that you deal with in the time that you spend in the industry. So they
Yeah,
might
for sure.
change hands with a few different people, but as you know, in those small little towns, there's not a lot of jobs, right? So if you're in one place, you're
Mm.
generally there for about 20 to 25 years before, unless you move out and you go somewhere
Yeah.
else. But it's yeah, it's pretty much that way. But oh yeah, I love getting on the road and just listening to music and going from town to town. It was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, Armidale's it's a beautiful town. I
mm,
loved living there, but the one thing which I'm sure you're probably aware of, the winter there is brutal.
oh, it's
Oh,
worse than Melbourne.
it's worse than Tasmania. Like I've lived
Yeah.
in Tasmania. Armidale is the worst winter I've ever experienced. So bad that I was like, I'm never living here again.
The winds. I had a wedding there for a really good friend of mine. Him and his wife were married there because his wife's from there,
Yeah.
and her parents are still there today. And still remember the wedding day, and I think the day before the wedding we had like it wasn't a bucks party, but it was sort of like the lads got together and we went to the golf course and we had a few drinks. It was very PG rated, right? So it wasn't
Yeah.
out of control. But it was
So you
like,
tell us. So you tell us. Anyway.
yeah, well, that's the story I'm sticking with.
Yeah.
And maybe another episode we'll have something all around Bucks parties. And the winds that were coming through at this particular time were just icy. And it wasn't
Mm.
even full blown winter. Like it was in winter time, but it was sort of like at the beginning of winter. It was in June, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wow, if this is what it's
This.
like here. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just so, so cold. And no one was ready for it, right? So all of the girls turned up to the wedding and they were all in these beautiful, lovely dresses that were off the shoulder. And none of them brought, like
Mm.
a knits or anything because everyone just thought, well, it's Armidale, it's only June, it should be okay. And it ended up
Oh
being
no.
a complete nightmare. So all of the ladies were at the shops in the afternoon trying to get something and borrow stuff from each other. But it was frightening, frighteningly cold.
Oh, it's the kind of cold that goes through your bones. No matter how
Yeah,
many layers you put on, it goes to your bones. I've never felt cold like that.
yeah,
But you know,
awesome. Traveling is awesome. Have you done much travel overseas?
not a lot. I've gone to America, which I loved. I went. Don't ask me what the names of the cities and stuff are. I'm the worst at remembering words in general. But wait, I always do this thing where I remember never eat soggy wheat bix. So that way you can work out where on the map. So wait, East Coast and West Coast I did. And then I went to Japan. I
Oh,
think,
beautiful.
yeah, so that's pretty much all I've done at the moment anyway.
Yeah, I like America. It's a pretty cool place. People are really lovely there, and
Yep.
unfortunately, they have some really, really odd presidents, but that's something for them to work out, not for us to even
Exactly.
understand. All right. So I know we've already talked a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced
Mm-hmm.
and the travel you've done, which is really awesome. What would you say are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned in working in the building and construction industry, or just in life
Hmm.
in general?
Just in life in general is probably going to be easier, I think. I think biggest lessons. I don't know. I'm such a sponge. Like I really learn a lot off just observing people all the time. Um, And that might be because they're really talented at what they do. And I'm anyone that knows me knows I'm a very, very vocal person. So if I think your work is awesome, I cannot not tell you that your work is awesome. And I'm like, so what are you doing there? And what's going on there? So I'd learned a lot of lessons like that. But also I've learned a lot of lessons equally by watching people from afar, where they have gone right in business and where they haven't gone right in business. So every time I'm like, oh, wow, that person's really got their business cap on altogether. And then they might have 90% working really well. And then I'll see 10%. And I'm like, if only they did it this way. Wow, imagine, and I don't say anything, but it's just in my mind. But then what I do is then I apply it to myself, so I kind of do like a mirror thing, if that makes sense. Like I look and I go, yeah, no, and then I apply it back to me, because I never studied business or anything at all. I've just learned business by watching everybody else, and whether someone's good at it or they're not good at it, I take it on board every time.
Yeah. It's an incredibly valuable lesson that you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
You'll find that a lot of people that I've encountered and come across in my career, a lot of them don't have shiny degrees or bits of paper that basically say that they're at university or TAFE for 3 or 4 years and have gone to a class environment and studied a particular field. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Every person's different, and certainly learning that way is really good for a lot of people. That's how they adapt and learn and acquire new skills. A lot of the, if you have a look through history, a lot of the rich, famous, entrepreneurial type people that are out there literally have learned from watching people in their circle of influence do things and make those mistakes and or make decisions that got them to where they are. And they literally have just, it's like a computer. They've copied it and they've pasted it and gone, look, it looks good. And then an extension to that, they've learned, like they've reflected upon every decision that they've made and gone, yeah, well, that didn't work, and that wasn't really the result that I hoped that I was going to get. And they've adapted and changed, and they've continued with that. So there's that discipline around taking in everything around you. So I feel I feel what you're saying. It makes perfect sense.
Totally, and you're right. Because there's so many times that throughout my years I've made so many mistakes, and it's taken me a lot of times to get an aha moment and go, oh, okay, I get it. Because you've kind of got to take that time to reflect, but sometimes it takes a fair few goes. But again, I've learned so much just by watching everybody else and applying it. So that's been the biggest inspirations for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you.
When you look at, like, every day when you get up and you're getting ready to get into it, get your hands dirty, what's your routine like? Or how do you make the most out of every day?
Being organized, when I say also organized, it's more, I probably use the word more structure, because I'm not someone that does everything exactly the same way every single day, because I just know that that's not my personality, but I thrive on structure. So I create momentum by, giving myself tasks every day and still almost every night, because one thing that I dated this guy years ago, and he said to me, all you do is you work in your business, you don't work on it. And I was like, what? I was like, I didn't even know what that meant, but now I know what that means. And so I'm always working in my business and working on it. And I'm always trying to work out ways to better implement and make that flow. And it could be something as little as, because my brain never stops. It's just like a party going on in there all the time. So I have to quieten the party down by writing those party notes on paper. And then what I do is I actually put it near the front door. So that way I can go to bed and all those notes are out of my brain and they're on the paper. So when I get up in the morning, all my notes are ready there for what I've got to do for the day. It could be, make sure you reply back to those 3 important emails first thing in the morning, because that's what I said I was going to do. Because that's the one thing I like doing as well is if I say I'm going to do something, I always like to make sure my words match my actions. It's really big for me. And so I write all the things that I said I was going to do. And that way I check my list off before I'm out the door, and I know that that's done. And that keeps that whole momentum and business, working on the business, flowing. And then I go to work and I work in the business.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool share. I get it. I've been there, and that's happened to me too. So excellent. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
So we're getting to the end of today's episode, and with every episode, we love to talk more about the people, who they are, and share that, because we have like a really cool audience that's been growing now for, I think, around about 11 months. I think we turned 12. Wow, time's flown. I think July, August is 12 months. And in that time, we've done a whole host of episodes. And our followers and everything has just been growing at such a rapid pace. And I always like to conclude the episodes with getting to know the people a little bit more and ask them some fast track questions just to really put them on the spot. So let's go there. Let's do that, because then we'll talk about how do people connect in with Naomi, and how do people learn more about you and what you're doing, and particularly micro cements, because I'm bloody super interested now too. So I'm sure that we're going to have conversations after this episode today. But let's start with a real classic. What's your favorite food to eat?
I've got a lot of favorite foods.
Sorry. Let me. I'm going to throw a caveat in there. If it was the only meal that you could eat for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Okay.
That's really narrowed it down.
It's not gonna sound that exciting, because you did ask the question, if you had to eat the same meal, like go, it would have to be something as basic as a toasted sandwich with like chicken and cheese and stuff on it. Because I know that I can do that a lot.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, because there's so many other dishes that I love.
Yeah.
But could I eat that every day? Probably not. But a toasted sandwich.
But if you had to, that's your sandwich.
Yeah, it would be.
Are we putting in a slice of avocado in that as well, or is that no?
I mean, you can if you'd like, Mark. But I put cheese and chicken in mine because that's like my go-to toasty. So
nice. I like it. That's cool. I didn't ask earlier if you were a fan of. Do you read books, or are you a podcaster, like a podcast listener? What's your flavor? What do you enjoy?
I'm a listener.
You're a listener.
Again, because not that I've touched on this, but I'll just quickly put a little snippet in. I'm pretty sure that I've got dyslexia. So I've always struggled with reading a book. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
But if you give me a podcast or if you give me a documentary, I'm glued. I love it.
Awesome.
So that's more my flavor.
That gives me enough ammunition for the next question. What's your favorite podcast you've listened to the last 12 months?
I don't know if I necessarily would say I have a particular podcast, but I will say I can tell you about the type of topic that I love listening to. Is true crime, because I love psychology. So I always love to listen to the story and kind of break it down and kind of understand like the whole picture. So I don't know, that just interests me a lot.
No, that's cool. I like it. Yeah, true crime, you can get addicted to that badly. Like it's like a book that you can never put down. You start reading a few pages and you just like, it hooks you in every turn. True crime's exactly like that.
Oh, actually, one thing I will say, not necessarily true crime, but one of those is what are they called? You may have heard of it. It's on YouTube. It's called White Underbelly.
I have heard of it. I haven't. Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that I always love all the people that he interviews, because it can get a bit monotonous with the type. But every now and again, when they have someone sharing their life story and their hardships and then how they've come out of it, I'm just like, I'm hooked. I love hearing real stuff. So.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah. Tell me about what the next 5 years look like for you.
obviously I still want to be doing microspend because I love doing it. Like I really genuinely love doing it. But my biggest long-term goal that's always been there, but it's just a hard one to tackle as much as I'd like, is I'd love to be property developing. Love to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I've got my first house and I'm slowly chipping my way through that. I'd love to think that eventually, once I sell that, I will have enough that I can sell that and then have a bit of money to play with so I can actually start a bit momentum. Because it means then, one, I'm doing what I love, because I'm also obsessed with interior design and studying it.
Yeah.
But I love having the opportunity to work with the same trades, because it's such a great opportunity when you can find people who you really click with. And if I get to work on homes and fix them up and choose all my trades that I get to work with every week, like that to me is a dream, because there's nothing better than working with like-minded people.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Property is it's a gift that keeps on giving, right? There's so much to it, you know, not just property development. There's also the investment side of things and the renovation side of it. And, building wealth from it is something that certainly a lot of people aspire to acquire as well. But yeah, there's a lot to it. Eh? That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So last but not least, if you had to write a book about your life, what would it be about?
Ooh, I think you know what I'd probably do is I'd probably share a lot of those experiences that really challenged me to my core, but then actually made my soul more colorful, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like example, that one, me moving from Sydney to Tasmania, thinking that, oh yeah, I've got work, I've got a house, and then getting there and going, oh shit, you know. And just being able to share things like that to make people go, you know what, it's not so bad when you do get into those situations, because you can make something pretty amazing out of it with your, like, the growth in yourself.
Yeah.
Because I remember one time, maybe it was 20 years ago, I remember this one tradie, and he was a bit of a gypsy, and I really admired his gypsiness. That's probably where that came from for me. And I'll never forget, he said this, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. And he was like, give me $5 and throw me off a plane, and wherever I land, I'll make a life. And I was like, I want that, you know? And so I took that mindset when that happened in Tasmania, and I was like, well, you know, be careful what you wish for, because it might happen. I mean, maybe I didn't have $5, but I only had 1,000 and I made a life out of that. So that's the kind of stories that I'd like to share if I had to make a book.
That's pretty cool. I love it. I've always wondered, you know how they, from time to time, and I'm not sure if you get this as well, when you're watching something on TV or you're seeing a news article online, and there's always this, it's like it's on repeat. There's the story of Jack and Rose from the Titanic, right?
Okay.
And Jack has this moment when he's at the table with all of the rich elite, and he's trying to fit in, and one of the elite has actually helped him dress really nicely in his fancy suit, and he's sitting there and he's getting grilled by all of the elite about, you know, or basically, why you're there. You're not one of us. And he talks specifically about, you know, having, you know, the shirt on his back and, you know, the wind in his hair and, you know, oxygen. I can't recite it. It's beyond me. But the messaging is, you know, look, that he just goes with the flow of the universe. Like he just picks up, and, you know, life is his gift, and, you know, that's what he traveled with. Now I know that was a story in Titanic, and I'm sure, you know, that was pretty much based on a, you know, what they could put together as much as they could, knowing who these people were. And you see that it just pops up in my feeds and stuff around me from time to time. But I've always wondered what it would be like, you know, just to go, let's just sell it all, and I don't know, do something completely different. How do you putting yourself in like that? For me, that would be like an uber uncomfort zone, where you literally have to just work out what the next steps are without actually having a plan. Because my entire life has been planned, right? And it's just like, well, do I or don't I? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been in those situations before, and I've always seen the benefits and the greatness that comes out of them. But you've always got to be prepared for the fear, because the fear is not fun. But you have to kind of learn to sit in the fear and kind of just get used to that. And because I know going through that situation, it has eliminated a lot of fear, but I had to go through a hell of a lot of fear to get past it, if that makes sense. So
100%.
I get where you're coming from, and I think it's a great thing if more of us can do things like that, because it's invigorating, but it's easier said than done though. So
oh, absolutely. Look, I've got 3 kids, and my entire life has been dedicated to ensuring that they're financially and, emotionally and spiritually okay. And my daughter's a lot older, but my 2 boys are only just starting to finish high school now. So it's been a long journey. When you've got those sort of commitments around you, it's very difficult to be selfish that way and go, and I'm only talking about me, but for me to be selfish and go, oh, look, I'm not going to work for the next 10 years, or I'm going to live off the vibrations of the earth and I'll let my kids fend for themselves. So good luck. I'll see you in 18 years and see how you go. We'll meet on the other side. But I'm sure there'll be a point in life where that will happen, and I'm sure it'll be scary and frightening and probably amazingly positive at the same time.
Absolutely, for sure.
Naomi, you've been awesome today. I've really loved chatting with you and connecting in, and I can't wait to actually have some more conversations with you post the episode today. If people want to get in touch with you directly, what's the most appropriate way for them to reach out and connect and have a chat and find out more about what you do and how you can help them?
Definitely on my Instagram. I love Instagram. It's such a great community when you're on there. The amount of amazing people that I've met that I haven't actually physically met via there. So I would say find me through there. And even if you don't necessarily want to reach out, like I've got heaps, which you would have seen. There's lots of videos and stuff on there for people to watch to get a better understanding of what it is that I do. Otherwise, if you want to, you can message me on Instagram, which I'm assuming there'll probably be like a little tag on this.
In the show notes, we put it all in there. And if you want to share with me, if there's any other examples of micro cement stuff, we can put that in the show notes as well.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me. I was so excited to be on here. So thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's amazing to connect with new people, and thank you for sharing so much today. It really means a lot. And it means a ton to the broader audience as it continues to grow and we connect more and more people together, and we build this network of amazing people that are going to strengthen the business of tiling. It's we all might come from slightly different backgrounds, or we may have pivoted left or pivoted right, but we all sort of work in that building and construction space. And I think the more that we can strengthen the industry, the better it will be for future generations, and we can all leave behind a much more positive legacy in the industry for the youth that are growing up today as well.
Definitely. So. Excellent.
Thanks again, Naomi. Have a wonderful evening, and until next time, stay connected.
Thank you. You too. See you later, Mark.